Greetings, friends. Reformed Stoic here, back with another video. I don't know if I'm going to do all my videos in this format. I think I'm going to do the videos that I make late at night in this format. But, just switching it up a little bit. For some reason, I think I talk a little bit quieter when I walk around like this. But anyway, let's get to the point. I want to talk about enlightenment. What does it mean to be enlightened? What's it like to be enlightened? And just kind of speculating, riffing, going over the details of my perspectives on enlightenment. Now, the first question that's going to arise from this is, oh, what? So do you think you're enlightened? Yes. Chad face, yes. I don't know, and then probably just no. But this is a good place to start, because I think enlightenment is more about a perspective and knowledge rather than how you act. The first thing people are going to jump to is thinking about how I act in terms of whether or not I'm enlightened. Well, you don't act very enlightened. You should know how to act. You should know how to act. You should understand the right way to act. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you're doing it yet. So there would be stages. And on some level, you could even say that my story over the last few years might reflect those stages. Now, before I start descending into just a complete self-loving, smugness, no, I don't really think I'm enlightened, and I don't think that I've necessarily been going through enlightenment stages. We'll call it a coincidence, okay? Coincidentally, it looks a lot like what I've been going through. Like, the rage clips of me online where I'm lashing out, I definitely think that could be a first stage of enlightenment, because you realize things about the world. You realize gatekeepers, traitors, narcissists. You realize this nature of the world where just about universally the most corrupt people are making it to the top positions of control. Like, you realize that the number one factor that contributes to you rising up the status ladder in this world is stabbing people in the back, being a narcissist, being a manipulator, being a sociopath or a psychopath. You realize the predatory nature of this world. When I was into the occult, before I found Christ, I read a book that I don't believe I brought with me here. I had a physical copy of it. It was something about dreams. Maybe the title will come back to me, but there's a quote in that book that I'll never forget. The book was about somebody who astral traveled supposedly in their dreams, and they had these different experiences. It definitely had kind of an occult worldview that I don't subscribe to, but she was traveling with these aliens, and they told her something about the world, that the nature of the world is predatory, and ultimately you shouldn't try to affect it. You should not try to intervene in the predatory nature of the world, because if you do, you're going to have a bad time. Let's think about some people who tried to intervene. And, these are just kind of surface figures that, maybe some people would roll their eyes at. But this is just kind of stereotypical, Abraham Lincoln, shot, killed. Martin Luther King, shot, killed. John Lennon, shot, killed. Tupac, shot, killed. You could argue that these people all tried to intervene with the predatory nature of the world, and the same thing happens to all of them. And you could argue that maybe on some level I started to try to intervene. I went against the advice that I learned. You know, you're not supposed to try to intervene, but on the path to enlightenment, you recognize the predatory nature of the world. That very similar to, this is like near the end of Better Call Saul. There's a flashback and somebody, Saul is at his dad's convenience store, and some guy like asks for money. He like pretends to be sick or something, and he begs for money from his dad. And when his dad goes in the back room, the guy changes his demeanor and gets all cocky. And the kid and the young Saul knows that he's full of crap, and he tells him, he's like, "Listen, kid, there's two kinds of people in this world: sheep and wolves. You might as well get a head start on deciding what kind of person you want to be." So you could absolutely just lash out, you know, and it could just really, it could be devastating. It could ruin your life. And it's almost like some sort of a spiritual rite of passage that maybe it has to ruin your life. Okay, back to considering, like, maybe if I am enlightened, maybe there's like a spiritual rite of passage where, you know, you're having a reaction to things, or you're venting about your life experience, and it's going through the lens of your realization of just how corrupt the world is. But maybe when the little thing goes tick in your head and you've reached enlightenment, God says, "Okay, well, I am going to design your meltdown to absolutely obliterate your life." And that's going to help. And that's like you're on the path, and now you can't leave the path. You know, now there's no turning back. And, you know, that's kind of like when your journey starts. So maybe enlightenment isn't just boom, one and done, or there's like different levels to enlightenment, or maybe you haven't reached enlightenment until you get to the end of the path. So maybe what I've described so far is like the beginning of the path towards enlightenment, but it's a milestone, you know? It's a milestone. You have a meltdown because you realize the predatory nature of the world. And it's like, oh man, everybody realizes the predatory nature of the world. It's like, no, you don't realize how predatory it is. And, you know, there's different levels of empathy, there's different levels of understanding. You get to a point where it just devastates you. It devastates you because you see that, like, people who you thought were your friends, people in your family, so many people who have come in and out of your life were these predatory people, and you're like one of a few. You're one of a few. So that's not very deep so far. So you might have a meltdown is the point. But then you start trying to figure out how to act, because it's like your consciousness shifts, or your perception of the world shifts, and you're in a new world all of a sudden, and you can't like do anything right in this new world, and you make a fool of yourself. Like, you are shifted to a different kind of understanding of life, and you just start freaking out and having a meltdown, and you're either gonna like just completely lose it forever, or you're gonna start trying to figure out how to adjust. And the quickest thing you can do, because it feels like life or death, and it's like, okay, something needs to change right now. You basically need to stop reacting to the world. You just need to stop reacting. Like, things are happening around you, you're witnessing things, you're receiving information, and it's just kind of this Pavlovian process. You know, they ring the bell, the food comes down, and the dog drools, and they realized at some point you stop making the food come down, but the dog drools because they think the food's coming because of the bell. The process is usually something happens, and then it hits you, and then you react. The process needs to become something happens, it hits you, and then just nothing. Because your reaction seems to be food for demons, narcissists, Freemasons, and police, and the Illuminati, and just all of the wolves of the world, all of the predators of the world. Like, they feed off of your reaction. So you just need to cut off the supply. I think eventually, I was debating making this video or a video. The best thing you could ever do is ignore people, or the most powerful thing you could ever do is ignore people. But that's basically what that's leading into. And this gets confusing, like when you have a YouTube channel or a business or something, because, you know, somebody might challenge you in your comment section, and you might think, well, if I don't respond to this comment, it's going to make me look bad or something, you know? So you might have to make some sort of a business decision with that kind of thing. But I can tell you how I do it on my channel. If it's only an insult and it's not any sort of like an argument or a point, it just gets deleted. It just gets deleted, and there's no response, and they get blocked. And it's because you have this understanding that regardless of the outcome of the interaction, these kind of people are getting off to the interaction in and of itself. And what happens is there's people who try to be super logical, and you want to get in debates with these people, and you are smarter, and you do have the right answers, and everything you're saying is correct. But, you know, you say something, and then they say something. You say something, and then they say something. It doesn't matter how brilliant your answer is. They're always going to come right back at you with something. And you might get in this pattern where your responses are really long, and then their responses are really short. Like, yeah, well, you're still a bitch. It's like, oh, actually, I'm not a bitch because of the one time that Socrates had the dialogue, and according to the laws of blah, 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 blah. It's like, oh, cool, dude, that sounds like something a bitch would say. And then you're just getting more mad, and they got their little suckers in you. You know, they got their little loose suckers in you. So, and that's pretty much like all human interactions. I probably will go ahead and reiterate this in another video, but just skimming over it, like, just about every single human interaction, unless somebody cares about you, right, is trying to get some sort of a negative interaction out of you. And this is going into that whole chosen ones thing. If you are on the path to enlightenment, not necessarily enlightened yet, we'll go ahead and define enlightenment as a final point. You get, like, you've basically gotten where you were going before you died. You know, like, you're not dead yet, you're still here. And I mean, there's always room for growth. We're never perfect, but you have achieved something very close to a level of human earthly perfection when you reach enlightenment. And what I'm describing here on the path is like shutting down so much of, because, you know, it could be just like a state of mind. At first I wanted to say, you know, you don't think I'm enlightened because I react a certain way, but there it is, because I react. I am not enlightened because I'm react, but maybe I am enlightened because I realize that I shouldn't be reacting to anything. Like, everything is bait. Literally everything is bait. And it gets to a point where, I mean, maybe a couple of things aren't bait, but it's not like it's going to be that big of a deal if you ignore them. You know, if somebody's like texting you and it's not bait, I mean, then it's not really going to hurt their feelings that much if you ignore them. It is going to upset them if it is bait and you ignore them. And but who cares? Because they're trying to bait you. So screw it. Like, who cares if you upset them? See, the best thing you could ever do is ignore everybody all the time. It's just like, but how am I going to get a job. How am I going to do this? How am I going to do that? I mean, why would you want to be around all those narcissists baiting you all the time? See, the mindset of enlightenment that eventually expands out into your actions, because you have to like learn. You get this kind of like imprinted natural law, a new level of natural law is being revealed to you. These people in the occult talk about like the Akashic records, which sounds really cringe. It's like, oh, the Akashic records have downloaded in my brain, and like for no reason at all, I have all the secret knowledge. But I would say this is basically the reality of what that is. It's just kind of this common sense that your genetics have grown to a level, and your understanding and who you are has grown to a level where this knowledge is starting to unfold. This understanding is starting to unfold. And, you know, it's out there. Like, it's in Confucius, and it's in Buddhism and Eastern mysticism. It's in the teachings of Christ. I mean, it's all out there. And I'm not necessarily... We're not talking about, like, meaning of life, like salvation of your soul, soteriology type of knowledge. We're just talking about the way to be, okay? When it comes to the way to live, and, you know, somebody could teach you a great way to live. It doesn't have to be from the Bible, but it is in the Bible. And what it is like, well, here's one of the ways. Maybe this is kind of a cop-out, but Jesus said, you know, treat others how you want to be treated. Well, I want to be left alone. You get to a point where you want to be left alone, so you just leave everybody alone. You know what I mean? Like, treat others the way you want to be treated. Well, I want to be left alone. Judge not, lest ye be judged. And then you start checking off all the boxes one by one. It's like, well, now I'm not judging anybody because I'm not around people and I'm being left alone. And yeah, you know. And then when you start going down the Beatitudes, blessed are those who suffer for righteousness. And then, you know, I should go ahead and like memorize the Beatitudes. That should be one of the next things I do. But there's like, blessed are the peacekeepers. Well, it's a very peaceful thing. I mean, this, and then again, this goes to like Eastern karma. When you look at like the Jainists, these people broom, they carry a broom with them and they sweep in front of their path because they don't want to step on microscopic life forms. Like, they're just trying not to touch anything. They don't want to harm anything. And the easiest way to do that is to just not affect anything. It reminds me of the Cave of Wonders in Aladdin. Touch nothing but the lamp. And the lamp is the spiritual alchemy, the enlightenment. And if you touch anything else in the cave, then you get stuck in the Cave of Wonders. I've kind of used that for a long time, like this metaphor for worldliness, you know? And what it comes down to, rejecting the world, I mean, that's really what it comes down to the Bible is, you know, my kingdom is not of this world. Reject the world. You must reject the world. I mean, that's what it is. That's how you reject the world, is you just frick off, you know? You just get away from people. And then you try to be with God. You know, I feel like it makes a lot of sense that I've started getting into this cloud of unknowing, which is like, it's just meditation, but you call it contemplation. Like, what's called meditation in Christianity is like reading over a passage of the Bible slowly, or just kind of like meditating on a short section of the Bible. But what is referred to as meditation in the East would be called contemplation in Christian mystic practice. And I'm really enjoying the cloud of unknowing. You know, you imagine there's a cloud of forgetting below you, and you try to just not think about anything. Okay, it's like the void meditation is like your base. What I try to do is like stare at my eyelids, which is the same as your eyes being closed, but it's like a slight difference. Like, you recognize that the blackness you're looking at is your eyelids. So that's kind of like a hack to not start visualizing things. So you stare at your eyelids, and then the cloud of unknowing above you is I kind of start to visualize like a sunny day, or sometimes it's a cloudy day, sometimes it's a rainy day. But my one visualization I'm allowed to have is the sky and the sun and whatever it is, sun in the clouds, sun in the rain, whatever. And then you just say, I want to be with God. And you reject everything else. See, this is another pattern. Like, this is actually, people point out that this is like a Neoplatonist tradition. Okay, the Southern Israelite had people read about oh my gosh, what's his name, the Pseudo Dionysius, because he's like, oh, look how Neoplatonist it is, this is disgusting, this clearly comes from Neoplatonism. But it's just this concept of that, you know, we only know so much about God. I mean, yeah, God is communicating in the Bible, but when you're trying to think of the eternally existing creator, the source of everything, I mean, this is something that's a little bit beyond our comprehension, to say the least. You know, someone who hears all of our prayers, someone who knows where everyone is all the time. Like, you know, we are made in the image of God, but it's safe to say that, like, I mean, you can't say God is nothing like us, but we're so vastly different from God, even though we are the most like God. Like, you know, God is like infinite, and humans are like a 10, and then a cat is like a 2, you know? So there's like 1 compared to infinity, and then there's 10 compared to infinity. So God is something that is very difficult for us to comprehend. So anyway, what I'm getting to is this Pseudo-Dionysian method of trying to contemplate God is pretty much the same as what's used in the Cloud of Unknowing, and they account for that in the intro. That you just start, when anything comes into your mind, you say, well, that's not God. Like, God is not that. Just random things pop into my mind, like teachers. It's like, oh, well, God is not like narcissistic authoritarian teachers. God is not police. God is not this, God is not that. You're better off starting to check off the list, like things that God isn't. But what you're trying to do is just cut through everything. You block off all visions and visuals in seeking of God. And, you know, the only concept there is that you don't really know what God is, other than that he's loving and that he's the creator, and that's what you're allowed to focus on. And you choose a word, kind of like a mantra, but you don't repeat it the whole time. You just use it to get yourself back to focus when you're trying to contemplate God. So the goal of this Cloud of Unknowing contemplation is to try to contemplate God. And I bring that up because it goes along with this pattern of rejecting everything. God is not this. God is not that. God is not this. So, man, somehow I've already ranted for 23 minutes here, but, you know, basically, like, when you reject the world, it becomes more and more literal. You get a much more literal understanding of rejecting the world. And, you know, it sounds very boring. And, again, you know, me appealing to the idea that I'm not enlightened. I mean, I watch all kinds of, like, YouTube videos, and I still, like, watch movies and play video games and do stuff. I mean, I still have other things going, but I guess you could say it would get to a point where somebody who's very close to enlightenment, and then, you know, this is like Catholic monks, people in holy orders, nuns, people who really spend a very hefty majority of their life in contemplation, and they're not watching any TV, and they're not really doing much of anything. And, you know, people taking vows of silence, I'm pretty sure that's a thing in monasteries, or just there's a very large part of the day where nobody speaks to each other, and it just sounds very boring, and it's like, well, what's the point of that? But like you're just kind of tired of the world, man. It's similar to depression, but it's like you realize there's a solution, you know? And it's like, oh, well, the solution in psychology is to take a pill and make your depression go away. But, you know, you're not being lied to when you're depressed. Like, this world really isn't, this world really is something that should make you sad. Like, it's a completely healthy response to a nasty place. Like, you know, this world really is a nasty place, and it's because of people, and it's because of the predatory hierarchy. And, you know, in line with what the chosen ones say, if you have this kind of energy where you were basically called to the path of enlightenment, and that was another video I wanted to make, like comparing how people treated me before I blew it to like how people treat me now. Because the pattern I've realized is, like, I didn't realize what I had, man. When I was this shy, nice guy who didn't pull the trigger, and, you know, some of these more, like, cocky alpha dudes would kind of push me around a little bit and, like, talk down to me. The thing is I had it all back then. Like, the fact that I hadn't said things that alienated me from everyone, I had it all, dude. And people were threatened by me. And that's why they were doing that crap. That's why they were doing that crap, dude. It is not that big of a deal, guys, to like not be a big like arm swinging baboon who pounds his chest and gets all the women and gets all the freaking clout, you know, like some football player badass guy. Like, that is not the worst thing, dude. It's so much worse to like have a freaking meltdown on the internet like I did, you know. But I'm starting to think that it's like some sort of a secret initiation into the path of enlightenment, because it really like forces your hand, bro. It just really forces you to reject the world. When maybe if you don't do that, you'll get tempted to not reject the world. I mean, look at celebrities, bro. I know people think this sounds like cope, but you hear it all the time. The celebrities who have everything, they have all the women, they have all the money, they have all the material stuff. And what do? They get depressed. They go insane. They get into like crazy, weird Pizzagate tier, disgusting Epstein Island stuff, man, because their dopamine receptors are just completely shot. And that's another thing. That's when you can start to realize, see, this is the one thing about psychology that I like. This is something that will help you realize that nothing in this world really amounts to crap. Is like, it's all just a squeeze of your dopamine pump, bro. Like, you know, smoking weed, having sex, a smile from a girl, a compliment, like getting the job, having an accomplishment. It is all just a squeeze of the dopamine pump. And I'd say the things that are like more valuable than that is like, you know, finding a wife that you actually love, having a family, raising kids. Children give you an opportunity to rediscover the world all over again. You can kind of live through their optimism. You know, all these nostalgic people like me, like, shoot, dude, I'm gonna get my kids to watch SpongeBob and watch all the nerdy cartoon crap that I'm embarrassed to say that I still watch. You know, like, you can like re-experience the world through a new set of eyes through your kids. So it's basically, guys, like, if it ain't family, it ain't crap. It just ain't crap, man. And I don't want that to depress you. You know, it doesn't necessarily mean that like you're missing out if you don't have a family. Because I think what a lot of men are going to start finding out is like, you are called to the spiritual path, and you hear about the later results when you're early in the path, and it just sounds boring, it sounds empty, and the stereotype is that you're obliterating your ego. And basically, guys, like, I would say that a very far level of real enlightenment is you realize that that's basically something that you would want to do. You realize that you would want to obliterate your ego. And My understanding now of the kingdom of heaven is very close to just like being reabsorbed into God, which, some people, some Freemason LARPers out there are having a freaking meltdown. Like, that's Neoplatonist! That's Neoplatonist! But everything about your personality is an imperfection. You gotta understand, like, everything about who you are, everything about what makes you you is like, oh man, but I love, Sum 41 and Friends and these novels and these stories. Like, yeah, you love a bunch of degenerate soy slop, dude. You love crappy. No offense, like, I like Sum 41 and I like Friends. This is all stuff that I like. Like, I'm roasting my own tastes, but okay, like, you like degenerate, brainwashing sitcoms and you like crappy pop punk mainstream MTV teeny bopper music and you like some smut novel designed to like depress people and like everything's crap, dude. Your earthly personality, the things that make you you, are imperfections. Like, your soul was like something really pure from God, and then you get put into this plane, you get put into this planet, and it just gathers a bunch of dust and dirt, and then that's what makes you you. And see, what it comes down to, guys, with all that Neoplatonist crap is that Plotinus studied in Alexandria. It sounds like so did what's his name, Pythagoras. That stuff all pretty much just comes from the East, bro. These Western philosophers, or I don't even know if Plato's considered a Western philosopher. I mean, it's a little bit more Western, but anyway, I digress. I don't want to start showing how not great my philosophy chops are, but the point is, guys, is that stuff pretty much comes from the East. Plotinus wasn't really saying things that weren't already said, and Taoism, and like Tao, somewhere in Hinduism. Hinduism is so incredibly vast, and this is kind of going back. Now I'm kind of going in circles. I was like, oh man, I think like it's not really wrong to say that there's a lot of truth in Hinduism. I was like, oh, wait a minute, nope, don't do that. That's bad. I mean, it's not bad, guys. It's not really that much different, You get reabsorbed into the monad in Neoplatonism. Oh my gosh, it's a trap. It's a satanic trap. I mean, heaven is the presence of God. And the supposed left-hand path is you want to like become a phantom and differentiate and escape because you don't want to get reabsorbed into God. It's like, oh, that's boring, you get reabsorbed, and you don't get reabsorbed into God. That's the thing. It's like you're not God. That's like what the main difference is in heaven you will still be you, but your earthly imperfections will be wiped away, and you will be in the presence of God's perfection. And I mean, speculating about some of the things we might be doing in heaven, I imagine I'll probably be watching my life back for like 80 years. I'll spend like 150 years rewatching my life and watching it from different angles and figuring out what people were thinking and getting different perspectives. And I'll bet there's all kinds of things to do in heaven, guys, but I guess we're getting a little bit off track here. I guess it's probably time to start wrapping it up, but yeah, I think the stereotype of dissolving your ego is very close to what enlightenment is, because this earth is just a place where you gather imperfections, and if you want to figure out, well, there's got to be something good here, it's all in the Bible. It's what the Bible tells you to do, bro. If you're going to interact with people, you got to be good to them. You have to be you have to have this positive indifference where you could just stand in front of somebody. And see, the thing is that I had this when I was a kid. Some of the times that my perspective was I was getting bullied, I actually was very peaceful naturally. And some guys would even point it out. There's this one guy like messing with me, kind of like something weird, like pretending to hump me or something. And Or he like put his hands up like like he was gonna punch me, and I gave him a hug. It's like, man, you're so peaceful, dude. And that's just how I was. I was very peaceful, but then I became very observant of it, and this is what I forgot to explain, is that in that first stage of my life, because I said I was going to compare how people treated me then before I blew it to now, people try to brainwash you that the way you are is wrong. They try to tell you like how horrible it is, and like how boring it is, and how you're a puss, and how you're never going to get women, and nobody respects you. Like, people try to brainwash you that the way you are is bad, and unfortunately it took root in me. And you know, I got all into rap and death metal, and I'm trying to put on this freaking performance so women will think I'm a badass. And I mean, I didn't completely fail. I'm not saying like, oh, I'm so delusional and you were always like once a puss, always a puss. No, I was figuring it out a little bit, you know? I mean, everybody has their place in the pecking order, but I was kind of pushing people weaker than me around, and people like less in shape than me around, and I was starting to try to be cocky and talk down to people, and some women were starting to buy into it. But well, then everybody just calls you an asshole, you know? And then you're just like them. And then you start to realize what's happening, and then you start going down this path of enlightenment, and then that's when you spurg out, dude. That's when you're disgusted by yourself, and you're disgusted by the people you grew up with, and you realize that you've been set up, and you realize that other people are trying to set you up, and then you just freaking lose it, dude. And then people are like, wow, look how unhinged you are. Like, hey, everybody, this guy's dangerous. This guy's a monster, even when 4 years have gone by, and you literally have done nothing aggressive to anyone. So, this was a rant, guys, but to summarize, the first thing you're going to feel when any sort of enlightenment is starting to sink in is rage, disgust, depression. It's going to be very intense, and I literally think that your life will depend. It's like you're gonna be in a car underwater, you know? It's like getting in a car accident. I remember seeing this on TV a long time ago. They're trying to tell you what to do. You know, you should have a screwdriver in your glove box so you can like press it up against the window, break the window entirely. Like, if you press a screwdriver really hard in the very center of a car window, passenger or driver side, the entire window shatters, and then you can swim out without getting cut or anything. The very first step of enlightenment is like you're in a car underwater, and it's like, bro, if you can't calm down and figure out the next step, you're gonna freaking die. Like, you might kill yourself, or you might like lash out, you might go get in a fight, and like you might go to jail or prison. Like, something bad might happen to you, dude. Something bad might happen to you in the first step of enlightenment. And you know, whether or not I'm on the path of enlightenment or whatever, I don't know, dude. Maybe I am. I mean, I'm pretty sure that I am, but I definitely don't think I'm there yet, because the knowledge comes first, but it's not really knowledge. It's just like this pure understanding that you can't even comprehend. And the first step is like, bro, you need to figure out how to just like sit still and take deep breaths, or you are going to like implode. You are going to ruin your life. So then you slow down, and then you start to try to like figure out what to do with this new knowledge. And the conclusion you're going to come to is that you don't want to have anything to do with anybody or with anything. And yeah, it's disturbing, you know. It's kind of like lonely and scary. And actually, the way I've heard borderline personality described is that you want attention, but you're afraid of it. Now, I'm not a fan of psychology, and what's weird is that every time I hear people say borderline these days, it's like women. You know, everybody's saying women are borderline, so I don't know. I've watched videos about borderline in the past, and it's a bit confusing, but I feel like I know what it is. You know, it's like when somebody wants to be close to you, but all they can really do is cause damage, and they accuse you of things, and they're horrible to be around. If you try to get away from them, they'll try to ruin your life. And it's like the crazy girl who's like yelling at you in your driveway, keying up your car, and trying to ruin your life, dude. But so how did I get to borderline personality? I mean, it's just like you realize that you want to be alone, and if you get caught in between worlds, I guess the point is like, you want attention, but you're afraid of it. But you're going to be beyond that because you're just going to realize, like, no, it really is better to not be around people. And so then you get away from people, and then you just start developing a deeper understanding of, like, most of what people do is hurt each other. Most of what everybody says is bait. The most powerful thing you can do is ignore everybody. So then you get further down the line. It's like, okay, I've mastered the art of ignoring everyone. And if you haven't, like, completely sabotaged your life, because I'm pretty sure that, like, nobody will ever give a shit about me ever for the rest of my life, and that, like, my phone will never ring and I'll never get a text, and that's, like, how ruined my life is. Nobody will ever get curious about me. Nobody will ever ask me how I'm doing. And that's fine. But yeah, like, if you guys haven't screwed your life up that bad, like, maybe somebody will be like, dude, where'd you go, man? Like, what are you doing? How's it going, brother? Like, long time no talk, man. Like, it could be a positive thing. It could be a positive thing, but it does kind of seem like, I don't know, dude. It's like in a video game, if, like, you're doing too good at the game or something, all of a sudden all these monsters appear out of nowhere and it gets harder. I don't know how to explain it, man, but the reaction that you have to enlightenment, it seems like it's designed to destroy your place in the world. So, like, you're forced to continue down the path. And the path is just realizing, it hurts to hold on to who I am, which is, oh, I watched all these crappy movies and I watched all these stupid TV shows, and oh, I laughed at degenerate smut, soy slop, sloppercog, Comedy Central, and oh, I love this sloppercog show and I love that sloppercog show, and oh, I love to eat sloppercog slop over here and slop over there, and I love to go to Slop Donald's and Sloppies, and everything is just horrible, but you understand that it's okay. Like, the difference between enlightenment and depression is that it doesn't destroy you because you realize that you're right. You're not being negative. You're rejecting the world, and you reject what you believe that you were. But, who were you when you were a baby? Who were you before you ever spoke a word? Who were you before you ever got traumatized? Before you ever met toxic people? Before you ever got pushed through the sloppercog slave public school, bottom slave class, like, slave caste system, like, you were meant to be poor and miserable public school system? Who were you, dude? You were nothing. You were just somebody made in the image of God, and this life absolutely obliterated you, and all of these suffering people around you who are, like, scared, and they have, like, a scarcity mindset. They're like little rats, like, clinging to my cheese. There's not enough cheese. And then, like, when your reputation gets destroyed, it's like, haha, more cheese for me, because he'll never get cheese anymore. It's my cheese. Like, like, if people were filled with love and understanding, if people were following what Christ taught, they'd be like, hey, man, I saw you yelling on the internet, dude. Are you okay? It's like, oh, dude, no, this is what happened. This is why that happened. And it's like, oh, bro, like, man, that makes a lot of sense, dude. Like, and it would be fine. If people were full of love and understanding, and, they treated people the way they wanted to be treated, which is with love and understanding, and they were willing to, like, hear me out and talk to me and be like, oh, well, that's Jake, and I know him, and I grew up with him, and he used to be my homie, so let me talk to him and figure out what's going on. If people were like that, this wouldn't even really be an issue, dude. And all these scumbag Freemasons and Neighborhood Watch and private security, military, dirtbag Satanists, they wouldn't be able to do this to me. But the world, unfortunately, is full of miserable, sad, low-level soy sloppers, dude. And my reaction to it right now is just a sign that I'm not there yet, bro. Because it gets to a point where you have love and understanding, and you've torn away all these layers of like who you thought you were, and all that's really left is love. All that's really left is what Jesus told you to be, is somebody who loves people unconditionally and who just doesn't get wrapped up in the world. And you know, when you start realizing these truths, like, oh man, this certain military figure, this certain military regime, you know, they were gaslit and smeared and lied about, and they were scapegoated, and wow, like our understanding of like certain things that played out in certain world wars is like completely warped. See, the thing is, guys, is like that also reflects the predatory nature of the world. And when you start getting involved in that, man, now you're talking about like war and political movements and something really crazy, dude. If you get too tied up in that, it's going to be really hard for you to embrace unconditional love and the peace of Christ and just kind of real enlightenment, man, because basically you don't get involved in the world. And you know, that book where she talked to the aliens in her dreams or whatever, I mean, you know, a broken clock is right twice a day is what they say. And it's just like, if you get tangled up in the predatory nature of the world, you're gonna get eaten, dude. You're gonna lose, because this place is just somewhere where we hopefully learn that it's toxic and that people are misguided. And you know, now we're in some sort of a Kali Yuga end times type of a scenario. It's either, you know, Christ is returning, or it's the millennium already happened and now we're just waiting for the final battle with Satan. Whatever, dude. It's bad times. I believe that you were meant to reject the world. And enlightenment is when you have fully rejected the world. And the process of enlightenment is a process of flipping out, calming down, isolating yourself, and then you just become at peace. You just become at peace, and it takes a long time. And then, you know, maybe a woman will just kind of like come into your life. You know, you go to mass and you do little thises and that's, you do what you got to do. I mean, I'm not telling people not to work. Maybe you can find a job where you can be left alone, that's relaxed, or you can live off of benefits, whatever. And you know, you got your cats. You know, my cats don't try to shame me. My cats don't gaslight me. My cats don't try to like set me up and ruin me. And so I love my cats, and they're great. They're just a perfect embodiment of unconditional love, and that's pretty much it, man. It really is destroying your ego, because well, we've already been over it, but yeah, maybe a little bit of merry-go-round there, but that is my understanding of enlightenment, you guys. And I believe these people, the chosen ones movement, these are people on different levels of this path. And I think it starts with just having bad times with people, because you were born with a head start, man. Girls and boys, chosen ones, beautiful ones, you were born with a head start. Like, God's law was imprinted on your heart, and you just had a natural, good, agreeable nature. And unfortunately for me, I was brainwashed to reject that. I was brainwashed to reject and try to undo my nature. And you know, people, and everybody says they have a crap memory and people don't remember anything, dude. The way I'm portrayed in those clips, you know, those clips of me in my worst moments, people know that's not who I am, dude. Maybe that's who they think I am now, but they know that's not who I was. I was shy, dude. I was reserved. I was nice. I was kind to people, and that's what the world did to me. That's what the world did to me, man. And people would be like, "Oh, you need to take accountability," and "Oh, it's everybody's fault except for yours." But you know what, dude? I'm done. I'm done with people, and I'm pretty sure people are done with me. And I'm pretty sure when I stop putting myself out there, nobody's gonna call, and I'm ready for that. I'm ready for that, dude. I'm ready for just peace and quiet, and Yeah. That's what I think. God bless.